Hello and welcome to DJL Exotics. I'm David, this is Henry, one of our Royal Pythons, and today we're talking about the safe handling aspects of snakes. Before we get started, a couple of bits of housekeeping. Number one, we are animal led, so if Henry decides he's had enough, we will be using one of our other animals to do some demonstrations in the video. And apart from that, please remember to like, comment and subscribe to the channel just to help us with those Google algorithms. Now, one of the reasons why we're talking about safe handling of snakes is because it's always important to know how best to handle your reptile in order to ensure that it's a safe environment for them and that it's also safe for you. Snakes, like many other animals, do have predators, and sometimes when we are going in to handle them, we can replicate the scenario where they might feel threatened by a predator, such as a bird or a fox, or even another snake. Now, with a lot of animals like snakes, those birds and foxes will be coming from above them, which is why we always want to approach an animal from the side if possible, where they can see us. Now, we've got to bear in mind that a lot of reptiles, especially snakes, actually have a blind spot which is directly in front of them. About 2 or 3 inches in front of Henry's head here, he can't actually see because his eyes were on the side, so there is a narrower vision in front of him. So approaching from the front is going to create a little bit of a shock to him because he's not going to be able to see you as well. Whereas approaching him from the side where he can see is really important. Now, the other thing to bear in mind with snakes is that they don't have eyelids, one of the features that makes them a snake, with no eyes and no external ears. It's all to do with the head, really, with a snake. And that's important because when they're asleep, you don't really know it, so you don't know when they're not concentrating. So the best thing to do is always make sure that you've got a noise or something which alerts the snake that you're there. And if you actually have the same noise every single time, it actually conditions them to realise that you're coming into an enclosure and that they should be ready for you and to be alert for you. And that will stop any kind of misunderstandings happening. If you go in and you're making a different noise every time, you might actually scare the snake and they might not realise what's going on, and that's when you can have incidences. So the other thing to remember is that we don't actually hold the snake as such. What I like to think about it is that we let them rest on our hands and we're constantly repositioning our hands. So you notice even here, I'm not actually holding, he's just resting in between my thumb and my finger, and that's just, I'm basically a tree branch to him, and he can use me as a tree branch to explore and try to get some additional exercise and just kind of interact with me. Henry's actually really good. He's normally actually not exploring like this. He normally just curled up in a ball and I'm just holding him, but he's getting out today for a little bit of a walk around before his dinner tomorrow. Now, one thing that you should always do is always avoid the head with snakes. What you want to do is kind of hold at least a good few inches down from the head, about 1/3 with smaller snakes, or about 6 to 7 inches, maybe even a bit more with some of the larger snakes. This is because a lot of snakes can get what we call head shy, where they don't like their head being touched. That is the most vulnerable part of them. If you hold their head, then basically they've lost their only way to defend themselves. So they tend not to enjoy that aspect. Now, the other aspect to always remember is that if they do want their head to be touched, what they will tend to do is just rest on you. Henry's not going to do it now. He might do it later on in the video. He might just rest his head on my hand, but that's all really the kind of thing that you want to do when it comes towards the head. Always try to maintain that 1/3 and 2/3 positioning on the snake. You always want to also be monitoring your snake. A snake which is happy is always looking around, exploring, sniffing, kind of using that tongue to sense what's going around, and that's a happy snake. A snake which is coiled up, looking at you and kind of hissing, that's an unhappy snake, and you should really leave them alone and let them get on with their day. They will often get out of it. If you do have a snake which constantly does that, then what you'll need to do is do some training with it, try to get it to socialise with you a little bit more, and that can be difficult. And we'll do another video at another date on how to socialise a poorly behaved snake, shall we say, a more defensive snake. There's not really aggression with a snake, it's all defence. They're not doing it because they want to hurt you, they're doing it because they don't want to be hurt. They're fearful, and that's the problem. And that's what you've got to get past with a snake. It's not dislike of you, it's just they don't want to do something. They feel like they could be hurt. The other thing to always remember with a snake is never to put them around your neck. Now, a lot of people do this, and I can understand in a sense why it does look impressive to have a snake around your neck kind of thing, but it's not really good. We don't encourage it. In fact, we would like to see that practice kind of stopped. And there are several reasons for that. Number one, it's not safe for the snake. If you think about how your neck and shoulders are, they're not a very good climbing spot. Your back of the neck doesn't have much for your snake to hold on to, so it's relying on the shoulders, and if it slips, then it can't always rely on just one shoulder. It will fall to the floor, and that could hurt the snake. The other thing it could do is that it could not feel secure, and then it could try to wrap itself around your neck, and that, while often is not a problem, it's not particularly a good position to be, because if it becomes a problem, it can become a problem very quickly. Now, Henry here is a Royal Python, and they have the capability of using a strength of about 14 psi. That's 14 pounds per square inch. Now that is enough to actually do quite a big harm to a human. In fact, anything over 5 psi can usually cause a little bit of, can injure a human. And even a boa constrictor, which actually only does 6, has that potential to cause that kind of pain. Now, with most snakes, at the moment, Henry's not actually putting any kind of pressure on me. I can't even feel him, really. He's just sitting on me. And that's how snakes are most of the time. They don't like to kind of hurt us. They're not out to hurt us when they're in handling sessions. They're just resting on us. They're just using it as exercise. But if they're in that fearful mode and they're thinking, oh, I could fall here, they might get a little bit anxious, and that's when they're going to try to use as much strength as they can to ensure their safety by hanging on to something. And if that's around, if you're putting them around your neck or shoulders, then that could mean that they're putting the strength on your neck, and that could be quite painful. Not that I've experienced it, but I can imagine that that kind of tightness going around you could be quite painful. And if that happens and you're on your own, then it's going to be very difficult to get out of, and that's when accidents can happen. Now, usually snakes realise what's happening and they will stop, but it's still not a good thing. The other thing to do is that we're always talking about hygiene, and one of the things is that reptiles are known to carry things like salmonella, though it's not as bad as some people wouldn't make out. There's just about as much risk as handling raw chicken, really. I'm not sure if that's the exact, what statistics are, but you know, all it requires is good hand washing. The only problem is that if you're putting them around your shoulder, then you're allowing the reptile to go on your clothes, go on your neck, go on your face, all that kind of thing. And that means that there is the potential, hello, no, we do not do faces, and that gives the potential for the snake to spread any kind of contaminants like salmonella. So if you're not kept up with your cleaning routine, for instance, you've not sprayed down with F10 or reptile cleaner recently, and it has picked up a bug, that's then going on your clothes. Now imagine you're not going to take your shirt off immediately after handling the snake and putting it in the wash, and that shirt is then going around the house with you, where it could be potentially spreading the illness around. So it's always best to keep it on parts of your body which you can wash very thoroughly. So like the hands and arms, you can actually go and wash these quite quickly, and it won't spread any germs. And that's one of the important things. When you come here for an experience, one of the things that we say is not to put your hands on your face, and that's partly because of the same reason. You don't want to be a snake going on your neck or on your clothes or on your face and spreading the disease and spreading any germs that way. The other thing to remember with safe handling is to always ensure that you've not been handling anything recently that might have a scent of prey on it. One of the biggest mistakes when it comes to reptile handling, especially with snakes, is to handle a prey item and then go and handle the animal. Especially if you breed your own mice or rats for your snakes, and you've gone down to the rat room and you've handled a few rats to clean them out. You might not have handled them, you might have just cleaned them out, you might have just been in the same area, but that smell will be on you. These guys have fantastic sense of smell, and they will smell that. And what will happen is that they will then think that you're food, and they may try an exploratory bite. And that is when people go off the animals, is when they get that little bit of bite. The other thing to do is also to remember not to handle your snake when it's just fed for about 48 hours. No longer than that, it's not needed. Smaller snakes can sometimes be done after 24 hours, but we prefer to keep to the 48 hours as a precaution, and that's because they're digesting, and if they don't have that time, then sometimes what can happen is that they can regurgitate, where they bring the food up, and that can cause scarring along their food tube, which will stay there for a couple of weeks, and they can't really eat during that time. The other time which you don't want to be handling a snake is during shed. It's quite easy to see when a snake has gone in shed. They will be duller in colour, and they will have what we call greyed out eyes, which is going into grey mode. Some people call it zombie mode, but I prefer the term grey mode, and that's basically because they can't actually see out their eyes, so they can't see you coming, they don't know what's going on, and they become a little bit more defensive. Don't worry, most snakes will come out of that shed within about a week, and you can go back to handling. During that period, really you should be leaving a snake alone, but if you're someone that likes to handle snakes all the time and don't want to have that disruption, the best thing to do, get a second snake. It's as simple as that. You quite often though will find that snakes will shed altogether. They tend to sink, so one will start shedding and the other one will go into it a couple of days later. But you could keep them in opposite sides of the room, which might reduce that. But I don't know for sure, I haven't experimented. The other thing that you want to do with handling is, when you're handling larger snakes, is to ensure that there's always a second person around. Geraldine, our 6.5 foot, is at about that limit where one person can do it. If you've got anything like a reptic or a really big boa, you really do want to have a second person around, possibly even a third person if you need two people to actually handle the snake and one person on standby to kind of help if anything goes wrong. Because what will happen is that if that snake wraps around you, you need someone else to help you take off the snake, and that's really a very important thing. The other thing to think about with handling is to always make sure about the limit of the time. Snakes really should only come out for about 15 minutes at a time. Henry's really approaching that time now, so we're going to close the video there. I'm going to thank you very much, and please remember to like, comment and subscribe to the channel. Help us with that on Google, and I'll see you on the next video.